Hey guys, so 29th of August here in Australia, 2 days away from the start of our spring. In this video we're going to be looking at our 3 Langstroth hives. The first one is the Red Hive, 2021 Italian Queen overwintered. The second one is the Green Hive, 2020 Carniolan Queen in its second season. And the third one's our Orange Hive, a 2019 Carniolan Queen in its third season. So let's get into it. So the Red Hive here is originally a queen, which was a supersedure queen from our top bar hive. She was removed from that top bar hive, put into this new hive, well, as a nucleus, with 3 frames of brood from some of our other Langstroth hives. We can see here there's only 6 frames of bees. Some of those frames are empty. 2 weeks ago, these guys were in a nucleus hive, so they've only just transitioned over into this larger box. Surprisingly enough, the girls have started building out this outer frame. One side just with a small amount of drawn comb, but the other side almost totally drawn out with nectar and a little bit of pollen. I fed this hive over winter, probably with about 3 litres of 1-to-1 syrup, just to keep them going because they had low numbers. Quick scan for the queen, she's not there, so I'll pop this frame aside and get into the rest of them. I'm really happy to see this brood on this outer frame. I wouldn't have expected to see this only after 2 weeks, but she's quite a good queen. She originally came, as I said, from our top bar hive. The top bar hive has shot off a couple of supersedure queens in the last season, which I utilised and popped them into this nucleus. One survived and one didn't. They seem to be good queens, easy enough to deal with on the comb, not too aggressive, except when they're queenless. This frame is one from the previous nucleus hive. Still shows good brood, good pattern, but plenty of hatched bees, new eggs and larvae. And the same thing on this side. You may be able to make out the glistening larvae in the darker cells here. This frame really represents why I beekeep. There's nothing nicer than pulling out a frame and seeing a solid brood pattern. You can see in all these hatched cells how the queen has relayed and larvae has started growing. Just perfect. You might notice in some of my videos that I don't check for the queen. Sometimes I can spend hours going back and forward whilst the queen is spending hours hiding from me. It's pretty obvious when you look at this frame that there's a queen. Just look how much larvae there is there. This frame is towards the end of the brood nest, so there's still plenty of brood, but more honey and more stores. And here's a close-up of my glove. This last frame, well, second last frame, is drawn out comb with plenty of nectar and pollen. We have a black plastic frame in the outside edge there, but that's going to be turfed in the next couple of weeks. My plan for this hive this year was really just to let it build up, but I think based on the amount of brood and bees in this box, I think I'll put a honey super on it in the coming weeks. It's going to be a really good hive. Nothing better than an overwintered queen with a lovely brood pattern. I'll pop that pollen patty back on top to let them finish it off, pop the lid on, and we'll have a look at the next hive. The next hive we're going to look at is the green hive. This has got a 2020 Carniolan queen and it's in its second season. This queen was taken as a split off the orange hive in 2020 and it's proven to be a great queen. I did a Demaree on this hive about 3 weeks ago, so there'll be no brood in the top box even though it is the old brood nest. The queen now lives underneath the queen excluder in the bottom box. The Demaree is a great method to rejuvenate your beehive. It allows the queen and the bees to completely reform a new brood nest downstairs, and it also allows you to remove any honey stores that they've had above their brood nest. The population of this beehive prior to doing the Demaree was quite large, and you can see here with the amount of drone brood that they were probably thinking about swarming. That's the good thing about a Demaree, is it offers them a complete new brood nest and reduces the chance of swarming. When you do the Demaree, because you put a queen excluder underneath the top box, it's a good idea to occasionally let some of the drones out that can't get through the queen excluder. So later on today I'll probably pop the lid off this hive just for 10 or 15 minutes to let them get out. You can see here how the bees have already backfilled that old brood nest with nectar. It also gives a boost for our honey stores, as this top box will be ready to take off in about 3 weeks. It would normally take months to get a full box at this time of the year. You can see this queen had a good brood pattern prior to the change in the box. These bees will hatch over the next few days and they'll backfill it with honey. This one must have been the last frame the queen laid out prior to going downstairs. All these bees, once they hatch, will do their duties upstairs and then migrate downstairs to look after the new brood. The population of this hive, combined with the brood pattern, is really a great boost in the spring season. I think I'll probably get double the amount of honey from this hive this year. If you've watched our other videos on this hive, you'll remember this ugly frame. Basically, the bees have been working this frame so many times over the last 3 years that the other edge is just an ugly mess. I keep threatening to take it out of the hive, but as yet I haven't. Maybe next week. So I'll close this box up, we'll pop it on the lid on the ground, and we'll have a look at the new brood nest. So this brood nest is a whole new box with 8 new frames, apart from a single frame of brood that was brought down from the original brood box. So there won't be a lot of build up in the last 4 weeks on these outside edges. There's plenty of bees though. You can see the population is quite good. The next frame shows the strength of this hive. They've completely built it out and started filling it with nectar. I'm a little surprised to not see eggs in these frames, but I'm sure the queen is working at her own pace. She just hasn't made it across here yet. She has made it onto this frame though. This frame was sitting right next to the original brood frame, and you can see here that she's laid it out and there's plenty of larvae. As the population increases, these guys will spread across these frames pretty quickly. The bees are a little bit confused at the moment, swirling around the entrance. I've put the top box in front of it, which sort of blocks their path. One of the reasons I took a split off the original hive to make this one was because of the brood pattern. These queens really know what they're doing. I do love a good carniolan. Easy to work with on the frames and not a lot of stings. It's a pleasant surprise to see that the queen has actually made it over onto this new frame. She's managed to lay out both sides. I'm not sure how long ago it's been capped, but I do love the colour of this brood. There's a lot of bees in the air, and one of them's managed to sting me through my pants. That's beekeeping. They've managed to start filling this side of the frame with some nectar, and on this side there's some freshly laid eggs, larvae, and a little bit of pollen as well. You can see how well this method works to get a brand new brood nest. All these frames are brand new with fresh wax for this year. So I'll close this hive up, pop on the queen excluder, put the top box back on, and let the bees get back to their job. They'll be pleased that I'm leaving them alone for a while. So the third hive we're going to check on is the orange hive, which is the Carniolan queen from 2019. It's her third year in this bee yard, so I'm assuming that at some point I'm going to have to requeen this hive. But for now, she's doing okay. The population on top of the hive isn't as large as I thought it may be, but that might just be the cover that I had on top. We'll get in and we'll have a look. So again, this is one of the hives that I Demareed. So this upper box is all the old brood nest. And as you'd expect to see on an old brood nest, you'd expect to see honey on this outside frame. And that's what we've got, honey. Second frame in, and again, lots of honey. There's also a little bit of brood on this other side, so I think at some point I've spun this one around. And just with the previous hive we looked into, this third frame has got some of the old brood nest in it. They haven't started backfilling with honey as much, but they have started. This queen's always been a really good layer. I like her pattern, and I like the way she works. This next frame is one that I put in about 2 years ago without any foundation. You can see how the bees have built their comb, but not built it around the wires. I'm not too bothered about this, as you can see the comb's quite old and dark, and I'll probably remove it this season. It's a good lesson for me. I should always put wax foundation on my frames. A couple of queen cups on this side of the frame. I'll knock them down, but there's no larvae in them, so I'm not too concerned. This frame's the old centre of the brood nest again, and you can see here there's some old brood. This side's basically all empty. The girls have polished those out and they'll be ready to put honey in them in the coming months. I don't really need to shake the bees off these frames, but I always like practicing it as it's a good technique to have. And especially when I'm in the honey box, I know that I'm not going to upset any larvae or any queens. Second last frame in this honey box, and I can see here that it's new wax, so I'll just pop it straight back in. This end one's an old one, so there's plenty of capped honey and nectar on this side. So I'll pack that up and we'll get into this bottom box and have a look for some brood. There's a good population on top of this queen excluder, so I'm thinking that the bees that have hatched from upstairs have probably already made their way down into the new brood nest. They'll help the queen raise some good young. You can see here, just like the previous hive we looked into, that all these frames are brand new except for one, and it's a brand new bottom box as well. I don't expect to see a lot of action on these outside frames, and I can see here that it's still just foundation. If you want to learn about how I put foundation on my frames, you can check out one of my other videos in my how-to playlist. I'm planning over the next coming months to do a few more how-to videos, so if you're interested to see how I do some things, check those out. Not much to see on this frame either, so I'll pop that in. I'm hoping to see some eggs and larvae on this frame. It looks like they've just drawn this one out and filled it with a little bit of pollen. This frame's a ripper. It's got great brood coverage, so for a 3-year-old queen, I'm pretty happy. Now if you take a close look when I flip this frame over, in the shadow of my camera, you'll see the blue marked queen. She's normally hiding, but at this time she's come out for a bit of a look. There she is. Just there on the left. You have to be quick or you'll miss this one. This next frame, although it's covered with bees, is just drawn out wax foundation. There's a little bit of pollen on the other side, but other than that, not a lot of action. I would have assumed this queen would have laid this out by now, but I'll keep an eye on her over the next week or so. This next frame is the same, just fresh wax. I can see there's not a lot of action on this other side of the box, so I'm just going to close it up and not bother looking. We've all seen wax foundation before. I'll pop this one back together, pop the queen excluder on it, and put the top box back on. I appreciate all you guys watching the videos. I enjoy making them, and I hope you enjoy watching them. If you'd like to see more, we'd love for you to click that subscribe button, or even just a like. And by all means, if you've got any questions or comments, add them below. Thanks very much, and enjoy your beekeeping.